To begin with, what distinguishes us humans from all the other species who coexist with us is probably our ability to communicate, be it through sounds, signs, pictures. We have evolved over the years. And throw in the immortal words of Galileo that God has created the universe in the language of mathematics, you know that somewhere there is some sort of science involved as well. What happens when you combine both the forms? What happens when you try and measure communication? To discuss this difficult yet thought-provoking topic, we have a very special guest in house, Ms. Bhavya Sharma. Bhavya has had a very unique professional journey wherein I think she started her career with big analytics companies like Moody's, EvalueServe, and EY before making the jump onto the field of content and communication. She currently works as an associate director of PR and communications in Urban Company, having seen the company grow from a Series C stage to a unicorn that it is now. She has seen it all, and she would have seen how to differentiate the right from wrong. I'll now pass on the baton to Akriti, co-founder and CEO of Wizikey, and Bhavya, to enlighten us with their experiences of PR and how they have measured it over the years. Akriti, Bhavya, over to you.
Thank you so much, Anubhav, and very delighted to have all of you on this webinar today. Thank you so much for taking out your valuable time, and very glad to have Bhavya here with us. She's had a fantastic journey, as much as Anubhav just shared with us. But what is interesting about her is that her role has metamorphosed over and over again, from research to getting into PR, the trenches of PR. Bhavya, first thing I want to ask, how did this role happen to you at Urban Company? And second, I really want to know what is it, and we'll dive straight into it. So what is the commonality that you see between research and PR as a whole?
Hi, Akriti. Hi, Anubhav. Thanks for the sweet intro. Well, honestly, PR kind of just happened to me. Like you mentioned, my career graph has always constantly changed and evolved, and took me where I am right now. So it wasn't something I planned for, but yes, it happened, and I'm glad it happened. Before I actually tell you how the findings, or rather the help research, my research background has given to me for PR, how I actually got into the role, would want to share that story with you all. I joined UC in somewhere in almost 4 years ago, right? And this happened back in 2019 when Rahul, our then VP Marketing, reached out to me and said that we are setting up a new team for PR. We're looking for someone to drive this function for us. I was excited. I thought I'll be given this offer. And his next question to me was, "Can you look for the pipeline and start interviewing people for this role?" And I felt like, dude, I'm not invisible, right? You can see me. But then I thought, let's let's start the pipeline. Let's see what's out there, how it's actually done, and interview people. But while we were interviewing folks, it happened over a 2-month cycle. We met almost 30, 40 people. We went through the assignments, all of that. What we felt was missing was most of them didn't understand the business objectives or the impact of what they had done. They didn't know how to convey that either. And that became a big red flag for us. If we want to drive this function, we want someone who understands both these aspects. Finally, one day, frustrated, my VP walked back and said, "You know what? This role is yours. Let's see how we can kick this out of the park." And I'm glad it came up to me. I think since then we have grown leaps and bounds with respect to our PR cycle. Now back to your question. That was a long story. Learnings from research into PR, right? So it will have to be that. As with PR, same is the case with research. It's all about storytelling and data. Like if you can find the right story from that data, if you can dig that right story, that narrative from the data, you will be able to do a fantastic job with it. But if you don't know what is that data that you want to get to, or what is that needle in the haystack that you need to find, you won't be able to weave the right story around it. And that's what research has helped me find, that needle in the haystack, and that has helped me in PR as well. What is that story that I want to share with the world? You're on mute.
Okay, that's very interesting. From actually interviewing candidates to getting yourself in the role, having no bit of experience, but in content, and which is obviously a lot of what PR folks do. But when you started, and in your previous roles, you were telling me that you did a lot of measurement. How did you start measuring your PR efforts early days in 2019 when you just took on the role?
So I think we're still figuring out the right measurements for ourselves, right? It's a long journey. We've somewhere reached there. Somewhere we know what we want. But the early days, frankly, were really tough. And I made the same rookie mistakes as all the peers. And I've understood that over the time that this is how it actually, this is the learning curve.
Yeah.
You start with looking at the number of coverages. I think that's the first thing any agency will tell you, ma'am, your news got covered in 100 newspapers or 100 online platforms. But as you then continue with your press releases, you start seeing that the number of coverages tapers down. And you then start questioning, why is that tapering down? Why is my news not being picked up? What is wrong here? And gradually you realize it's not the quantum of coverage, it's the quality of the coverage that you're getting, right? So it's no longer about 100 or 200 coverages. It's about getting those 10 right platforms where you want your news to be published, where you want the right audience gets to it. So from quantum, it comes down to quality. And when you start focusing on quality, you automatically start focusing on the right news for the right audience set. So suppose if I want to reach out to my consumers, especially during COVID times, my focus on the story would be the safety protocols we've implemented, how we are ensuring that that we have distributed safety kits to our partners, how we are ensuring that no containment zone services are being delivered by any of the folks. Then if my audience is partners, my focus then would be the kind of efforts we are doing, the COVID insurance we launched for our partners, how is working with UC going to 2x or 3x earnings, multiply their earnings. If my stakeholder is going to be potential employees or current employees, then of course my focus topics would become then ESOP programs that we have internally in the company. Or when you join, you see what is the world that opens up for you, the growth prospects that open up for you. Right. So yeah, so from quantum to quality, then stakeholders, right? Focusing on the number of key messages for each stakeholder and then getting them out to the right platforms. That is how we've been now doing it and focusing on. And of course, all of this right now is thrown in some Excel or a Google sheet where everyone can see what's going on.
Yeah, I know inaccuracy and Excel sheet is like every PR job's nightmare, right? Yeah. And it's been for so many years. And I know that you recently started using Wizikey, so I understand that it might still be a little bit offhand. But what I heard from you was you were looking at headlines, you were looking at messages. So how were you really doing this on Excel sheet? Were you looking at, tell us how you crystallized on messages and how you started measuring these messages on a day-to-day basis.
Okay. That's a very, very deep question. Let's see if I can answer it correctly. So how did we crystallize down to the messages? Our focus was the stakeholders we want to speak to. If we are talking about, say, our partners, right? Our key pillar with respect to partner communication has always been what we are doing for the gig economy, how we are building gig economy and the kind of support we are providing. So there's that security net conversation that is definitely going on globally with respect to gig workers. And that's something that we were already working towards, the kind of insurance programs we had in place, health insurance, accidental life insurance, most recently the COVID insurance, again, first of its kind initiative by our company. Then the kind of earnings that multiply when partners join us, or even the fact that how their livelihood completely changes, right? So if I give you an example of one of the most recent partner stories that we covered and also got featured, happens to be my namesake, Bhavya Sharma. She is our first female RO technician, right? Wow. And She also happens to be India's first female aero technician, which we weren't aware. We thought we should not go out with that claim. We should just say that Urban Company's first female aero technician. But when we went out with that story, and it's a beautiful, heart-wrenching story. I'll share the link if you want to look at it sometime later. Media picked it up and they touted her as India's first female aero technician. And those are the stories that eventually start adding up, right? So if you gradually, when over the years, over the last 2 years, how we've been able to build this narrative is through all the actual hard work that's going in. And when there is actual work being done, the stories, the news that you want to go out is very honest. It comes straight from the heart. We're not spinning lies, right? So, and that's why I think media also likes to pick them up, talks more about it. Most recently would be how we are continuing to do well for our partners and changing things even for consumers in the right way.
That's very interesting. I've seen some headlines of Urban Company of late, and I see how different, how very beautifully it's written, and media's own belief is very well reflected in the stories that are getting created. So many congratulations on that. And I really say this a lot of times that Aishwarya Rai is a beautiful actress, right? She is so beautiful, and everybody, and it's like a company. Everybody wants to know more about the company, but it takes a good director to make her perform well. And similarly, I think it takes a good corporate communications person to go deep in trenches, understand what the story is, and really make the company perform on PR. So, Bhavya, really congratulations on that. And
thanks. I wouldn't want to take all the credit, though. I think we are genuinely doing some fantastic work here. But as most communication professionals, I do think it's about being alert at all times. You never know when the right story will hit you. So unless you have ears on the ground and know what's going on, what's cooking in the company, you wouldn't know which is the story you want to go out with.
Right. And you explained it beautifully, right? What you're saying is that first, understand your audience, see what the company is really doing, marry that to what the media really wants to talk about, have your headlines in your head and start measuring how many times are you hitting with your key messaging. And I really wonder how you're doing this in an Excel sheet, but having been in this place about 5-10 years back, I do remember we used to have KM1, KM2 and say that, okay, this story captures KM1 and this story captures KM2. Yeah, so hard job, but yes, I think it's very important to measure messages that are there in the story. But with that, you were just telling me about your favorite story. But can you tell me about the favorite story and headline that you've had recently and how you got there, right? How did it start with the CXOs participating and what happened, and then how did you get the headline, and how are you like measuring that now?
Sure. I think one example I've already given, like apart from that, I think the ones closest to me would be where the headline talks about the impact we've made in our gig workers' lives. So, for example, it would be in 2020, December 2020, Fair Work report had come out about talking about the plight of gig workers and Fair Works, which platform allowed them to work more fairly, right? And Urban Company ranked first on that list. They scored us 8 on 10. And the headlines that started coming out of that being the best platform for gig workers in India, right? Those were the headlines that our dreams are made of. Right? Right. So those definitely did touch, are very close to me. All the headlines that emanated from there about Urban Company and being the best platform, definitely. The others would be most recently even about the way our business is being talked about, right? So one of the most recent is how Urban Companies bringing back erstwhile closed services. So this would be specifically, this is about chefs at home category. So when we were in our previous model, I think this was 2017, 2018, when we used to have cooks at home as a category, and we shut it down because we couldn't standardize it, among other services. And now we've restarted it. We reinvented the engine, how this can be standardized, and we've gone out and the way it's being loved by consumers. We're seeing so much Twitter honest love coming in, and how media is picking it up. So those stories are also really good stories. The best part is beyond just numbers, right? It's like it's not just about 1 lakh deliveries done in a month. It's not those headlines. It's meaningful headlines that are coming up. So that's important for us.
Okay, very interesting. And it means that you've gone deep into networking within the company, understanding from various CXOs. Now that brings a very important point, right? How do you get your CXOs invested in PR? Do these metrics that you have been measuring on headline get them more interested and make them invest more of their time? So give us that bit of journey where you're able to network inside the company and get them invested in PR.
We have this internal belief that we are a very media shy company, to be honest. Of course, you have been recently telling me you're no longer media shy, but I continue to believe so. Of course, we were very media shy in KG initially. We have shed that. We are more open now.
Sure.
So getting CXOs involved in PR, right? I think this is the toughest job. From a PR manager, you suddenly become the person who hounds them 24 hours, 7 days. Whether it's a weekday or a weekend, you'll be messaging them, you'll be calling them, you'll be sending them messages on Slack, and you'll end up also becoming their EA while managing their calendar. Right? I can see that slot open for half an hour. I will schedule that interview for. So you end up controlling a lot of things that you didn't realize you were supposed to. So being able to don those many hats and ensuring that every single message that every single spokesperson goes out with is same. Right? You cannot have, especially in our case when we have 3 founders, we can't have 3 founders talk differently. It has to be one voice that comes out of the company. So keeping the narrative same, irrespective of who's saying it, and being more open about it. Those were some really tough ones. Now, how did we get to it? I think the real impact when house founders started believing in the real impact of PR would be when the GST policy had been rolled out for the first time. We wanted our voice to be heard. There were certain concerns that we had, and we wanted to table them. Now, how do you do that? Government is a big machine. You really can't just go and ban the doors, right? So the best way to go about it is writing an op-ed in an ET or other such publications. Our founders wrote it. And incidentally, the day they were going to meet one of the senior officials, that person had that very news article on his desk open. So when Abhiraj walked in and he sees his face and his article on that bureaucrat's desk, he knows that the message has landed. That meeting went very positively for us. And we were able to get our concerns addressed. Right? That's when you see PR in action. And that changes perspectives internally as well as externally. The other big thing was, I think, when we became a company, this is back in Jan 2020. It was a decently big media event, I would want to call it. We had a really good turnout. What led to was a 30 to 40-day news cycle from that one event, which meant that we were either on the news channel every other day, or we were in every publication on every other day. And that kind of just multiplied our brand presence, our brand awareness, which again became a real visible impact for the founders.
Sure.
And when COVID happened, of course, then it became about assuring our consumers and our partners that we are here for you. We are taking all the precautions necessary. And this was the most, this is a message that you can't have just anybody talk about, right? You want your founder to be the voice of the company at that time. It's the CEO who needs to assure the consumers that we are doing the right thing that are needed. So all of this kind of added to the presence of our CXOs in the media increased rapidly.
But you're so right. I think what you're saying is that, and I also truly believe in it, that comms role is so much more than marketing, right? Because you're talking not just to one stakeholder. Constantly you emphasize that you're talking to partners, you're talking to government, you're talking to, and looking at those stakeholders and having the messages right, reaching them, and measuring if you're actually going in the right direction is not it's a complex role. and it's complex measurement as well. So we're getting our inspiration from this, and we'll see what we can build more around it. But coming to, and we'll jump into questions from the audience. There are a couple of questions here and from all our friends here. But before that, what is your wish list, and what all are you measuring right now? What is your wish list on measuring? And would love to hear more about that.
That's a very deceptively easy question. It seems easy on the face of it. It's just wish list that you want me to see, but it's so much deeper, right? It's like the iceberg. You can only see the very small part of it on the surface, and there's a lot more going on behind it. So I would want this black box called PR impact measurement to become transparent. That's the broader wish list. What that would entail for me would be share of voice. How are we? So what we do right now internally is look at headlines and is that driving any particular key attributes that we've identified internally for the brand messaging, how it is driving that. It would be easier if there's a tool that can help with all of this, right? So messaging analysis for key attributes is my head. If I'm going out with a press release today, is it trending tomorrow on the internet or not? Like or which are the voices, the important key opinion formers, right? KOFs. Are they talking about it in the media next day, on social and next day? Is this worthy of talking about? And not just say a marketing campaign, actual news, not marketing campaigns, right? So is that being talked about? Can we in some way dissociate headline from the body? Right? If can we give more, how do we say that headline gets more importance than the body? How do we start measuring that? And of course, the sentiment analysis is the article good, bad, ugly. If it's an industry story, how much space am I getting vis-a-vis the other company in an industry story? Is that equal? Is that not equal? Am I being touted in the right light or in a bad light?
Okay.
All of those things.
You have a huge wish list, and ranging from SOV to sentiment to social spread of your messaging. That's amazing.
I think it will happen. It will have to happen, right? We cannot just be about traditional media and online portals. It will have to spread to a lot of other aspects as well.
That's very rightly said, because messages are being consumed everywhere by all stakeholders. So yes, I think you're very, very much right there. With that, I'd like to pass it on to Anubhav. There are a couple of questions here which he'd like to, and maybe if we want, we can also have our friends take the questions directly. Anubhav?
Sure, actually. So I think pretty long question. I'll just get to the gist of it. How do you think we can maintain the right balance of quality and quantity? Because you talked right about that, agencies would tell you that these many links have appeared, but you said that messaging is also important. So how do we make sure that we have the right balance of quality and quantity of a successful campaign?
That's a really good question. I think what we'll have to also look at is that PR campaign a temporary one, or is that a sales campaign that you're touting as a PR campaign, or is that a genuine PR campaign that will take a year or two to actually start yielding results? Personally, I don't think there's anything called a PR campaign. PR is always, it works over the years, it compounds. It's like that mutual fund that will yield results after 3 years and not immediately in the 6 months, right? So that's how I look at it. If I give you a few examples of our own at UC, when we had started off, some of the things that we did was start writing a lot about beauty in magazines, right? So what are the best ways to take care of the skin, XYZ, all these beauty articles you'll see written by an urban company expert. It made sense at that time. Now, when I look back at it, it's the most ridiculous thing we could have done. It added zero value to us. How did that change anything? It did, right? We wanted to, and that's when we started shifting gears. We don't have to become we need to talk about what we are doing for the society at large. How we're contributing. How are we contributing to the dream of millions of Indians wanting to join the gig platform? How are we contributing to the job creation aspect of the economy, of the booming economy? How are we adding value of how are we helping consumers save time, right? So those were the key attributes that we wanted to drive for all our stakeholders, and that for us is the PR campaign. Anything else is marketing and advertising, right? So if today we go out on a sale and we put a press release for that, it's an advertising campaign. It's just a press release that has zero value. Nobody is going to pick it up.
Sure. We have another interesting question. Is there a framework or a template that you use for crisis management?
I wish I did. If someone can make it for me, it will be fantastic. I think it really depends on the kind of crisis. COVID was a crisis for all of us, right? And it was new for everyone. It was entirely unknown territory. Nobody knew what to do with this. And we thought the best way would be to talk about the safety protocols, and first implementing them and then talking about them. The kind of back-end infrastructure changes we made in our technology within a couple of days' time. What we did, how we did, training that we had to impart to 30,000 partners. You're telling 30,000 people virtually that now you need to sanitize your hands every single time. You need to wear gloves. You need to check your temperature and put it on our platform, or you need to wear face masks and face shields. That's the radical habit change you're bringing in. So how do you bring that and then start talking about it? That was crisis management for us. There, of course, for a lot of other companies, crisis would be considered very differently. But for us, this became very important for us. And yeah, I think we've done a decently good job there.
Absolutely. Aarti, you're on mute.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Bhavya. Prevention is better than cure, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Actually, on the same tone, we have another question on measurement. So can you share an experience where measuring PR has helped you to be ahead of your competition?
No, I'm actually asked this question several times, even by my internal stakeholders. And when we are discussing this, the first question that comes up is, who should we consider our competitor? If you really look at the business itself, it's highly fragmented, right? So you have so many competitors and yet none, strangely. If I start looking at it from a tech startup piece, then we have a lot of peers. But then it's no longer about business to business. It's about your perception in the media. Are you a great startup? Are you a startup worth working with? What is your employer branding all about? How are you attracting tech talent, which is the latest the buzzword, talent wars. So all of those, yes. So how do we look at metrics in these cases would be, it would continue to be the same for me, to be honest. If it's employer branding, then it becomes how many more people are applying for the same job? What kind of profiles are we getting? That's where I need to work with the HR team on that piece. I need to work with the CTO and the tech heads for that. If it's about, say, gig workers, or those will be the other competition if I look at it, right? The gig space. How is working with us improving their livelihood or their earning potential? Those will be the news pieces or that I would look at. So the PR metrics will change according to what I am focusing on at that particular point in time. Of course, I think we are in a unique situation that way, because we have competitors and we don't have competitors. It makes the job equally tough.
Understood. One last question, which is, you have seen Urban Company grow from a CVC company to a unicorn. Do you have any particular strategy regarding your funding announcements?
Thanks, Abhirami. I think this is a beautiful question. It's also something that it became important this year, right? It's also how it grew. So when we were Series C and we did Series D, E, F, I mean, all of those series, it was fine. We would go out, we would do a press release, we would have a couple of interviews, and it was done. Mm-hmm. This year, however, things were very different. They just went ballistic, right? So we were in the thick of the second wave. We had lost someone internally, very close peer. And we were, and the news broke before we could. So we had a online platform breaking the news before we could talk about it in the media, or we would want to talk about it in the media. What felt nice this time around, though, was I had journalists messaging me, do you really want to talk about it right now? And we were sure we did not want to. When the news broke, we actually started talking about we went out to the media with our message a month later. And we had the media standing with us during that time. And best part was they wanted to give us that time. They were okay giving us that time. And it didn't mean that they didn't talk about the news when it broke. It was probably just one of the many headlines they went out with. But when we reached out to the media to talk about our unicorn status, they wanted to. They gave us ample time. We did all our interactions within 3 days. We had almost, I think, 15, 20 interactions lined up, split equally between all 3 founders, because I wanted to give equal space to all the founders, which also makes job very tough, believe me, having 3 founders and navigating that. But yes, we had the same key messaging going out with all 3. And I think the best part is that the media stood by us during that tough time.
That's fantastic. And it's very rare to see, I mean, this kind, like, what you just shared, that you had a 1 month before the news broke out, and you could talk to media, and the media still stood by you. And that's such a synergy between when the company really wants to talk about what they are doing versus just that breaking news phenomena that we are getting very used to because of the online media since now almost a decade. So that's
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Anubhav, any more questions?
I think Abhirami just has a follow-up question that has this kind of PR help you in garnering investor attention in urban company?
I would like to believe so, yes. Whether it actually has happened or not, I think my founders will be better placed to answer that. But I think what it does help is the positive sentiment does impact investor sentiment, right? The more you are in the media in the right light, it's that virtuous cycle. It will keep on compounding gradually.
Yeah. True. I think that's about it from all the questions. So thank you, Bhavya, so much for those lovely insights. But before we go to the end of the webinar, I would just like to take 5 minutes of everyone present here on the call, because I heard the entire wish list that you had, plus the kind of things that you said are really important to measure, and not just a standard SOV or the number of coverages that we get. On similar lines, just wanted to take all of you through certain things that have improved on Wizikey over the course of the last 30 days. Yeah. So while brand share of voice still remains important on the basis of number of stories of where you are getting covered, and trust me, I've taken Amazon, Flipkart, Snapdeal because of the latest, shopping gala going on. They are literally in the news on a daily basis. But apart from number of stories, you can also capture the reach that each of these stories have created. So Flipkart, while if it would have gotten less number of stories, they were in more prominent, Amazon was in more prominent news portals. And that's why, while number of stories were less, its reach was slightly higher when it comes to the eyeballs that it garnered. The second most important thing I think that Bhavya shared her views about was, okay, you are creating stories, but what is it really about? So for example, as an e-commerce firm, I can think of 3 messaging pillars that I might have. My tech end product around hiring, tech hiring, as Bhavya said, is the new buzzword, and my sales and revenue, how that has moved up. So Amazon and Flipkart, while they are at a neck and neck level when it comes to number of stories in around these 3 important pillars, probably Flipkart takes the lead. And that's how you can see, whether the kind of news that I'm creating, is it really impacting my business? Is it really around the things that I want to talk about or no? And these are things that are readily available in Wizikey. And if any of you would like to set it up, just drop in a message to any of your team members, or send out a mail to success@wizikey.com, and we'll be happy to help you take through all of these different. I think we have launched about 15 metrics in the last 2 months. We'd be happy to take you through all of them. Yes. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in, and special thanks to Bhavya for taking her time out on a Friday. I know the kind of responsibilities that she must have on her shoulders, and still she took out 1 hour of her valuable time to make sure that we get insights to how this all happens. Before we end, there's a small poll that we would like to run through all of the people who have joined us, and those answers would really help us understand what we should really focus on. Yeah, so a small 2-question poll would take less than 5 seconds. Yeah.
Right. Also from my side, thank you so much, Bhavya, for a very insightful conversation. It was lovely having you, understanding how you work deep in the trenches in PR, take the stories out and get beautiful headlines out.
Thanks, Akriti. Thanks, Anubhav, for having me. Loved it.
Right. Thank you so much, Bhavya, and thank you everyone for joining in. This really boosts our confidence a lot. So thank you so much for listening in, and yep, hope to see you in the next webinar as well. Thank you.